Hello and welcome to Towle Talks. Today we finish models. So remember that this is going to be a follow-up lecture of the previous lecture, and we had talked about creating models for the Hoot user in the previous lecture, and the problem of the day was to try to go ahead and make a model for the Hoots itself and the Hoot. So last lecture we started models, we were working on some different, the user table model, and now today we're going to go through the Hoot table and the like table model to go to interact with the database. Hopefully you've already tried this and made inroads into accomplishing this, but today we'll make sure you have it, and again, make sure you have everything working after this lecture. So the first thing we need to do is we need to focus on making a Hoot. And here we're going to talk about a little bit about MySQL date. It's a little bit of kind of a weird data structure, but once you understand how it works, it's easy to insert these, and it's always good to have a date for a record. So the Hoot model, we need to be able to create a Hoot. We need to be able to update a Hoot. We need to be able to get the Hoot itself or multiple Hoots if we need to. And we need to understand about MySQL dates. This is going to be a new thing, and MySQL dates are a little bit tricky in MySQL, but not horrible. Hello. So today's going to be a quick one. We're going to just go through the Hoot model and the Hoot-like model. Remember that these were the two requirements of the problem of the day for the previous lecture we did. So once again, I'm going to just as a quick reminder, file, save as, just to show you, I've made a Hoot model, underscore model. The underscore model you don't need to put. I put it there just because it helps me remember, but it's actually not necessary. But you do need to have the first letter capitalized and everything else be lowercase. I made a Hoot model and I made a Hoot-like underscore model file. They're both underneath the model folders, underneath the application, underneath our web application folder. And again, I'm going to use the kind of data structure or idea for our model. So I'll have the class Hoot model extends CI model, and I'm going to use the four columns we have in our table: public ID, public author foreign key, public message, and public date mod. Date mod's probably the only really new concept we're going to talk about today. So this is a little bit tricky in MySQL, but we'll talk about how this works. In the constructor, we're going to call it parent constructor. We're going to load the database, and then we're also going to load a helper function called date. So this is going to help us with dealing with the MySQL date stuff. Now, starting off, we want to kind of follow along with the idea of CRUD. We want to create a message. Again, this is going to be kind of like a Twitter thing where we create a word, or we create a little message that's like 128 characters or less, and we post it. So here what we're going to do actually is we're going to send in the author ID and the message. Now if you think about that, we don't actually need anything else, because the date modified is going to be whatever the current date is, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then the ID is going to be auto increment, so we'll just set that to 0. So this ID is equal to 0, auto increment. This author FK is equal to the AID, which is the parameter author ID I passed in. How did I get this, you say? Well, in this situation, I'm setting this up so it's getting passed in from the controller, which means the user's ID will probably be stored in a session variable, which we'll talk about very soon. And then here we'll have this message equals M, whatever message was passed in. And then here, we're going to talk about the date. So actually this line here, it should go down after this line, just to categorize it better. But this is going to be a date string, and this defines the format in which MySQL wants the date timestamp. So it's the %year dash %m %d lowercase, capital H for the hour. Lowercase h will not give you 2 digits, so you need 2 digits. So capital H, capital I for the minute, capital S for the seconds. This is a valid format for MySQL's date time. So this is the format we want the date to be in. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a function built in called date or mdate. So there's an mdate and pass this string in, this string here, pass this in, and it's going to get the current date and time and assign it to this date mod. So this is how we're going to assign the date mod. A little bit arduous. You can also do this with a built-in PHP function date. I'm just showing you a CodeIgniter way of doing it. But it's a little bit tricky. But it's worth doing. That way we have the timestamp and we can grab it if we need it. I put this statement in for debugging statement, so we no longer need that. And then once we have this set up, we'll just do this database insert or this DB insert hoots, the table hoots, and then we're going to pass in this data object. So after that, we're going to have get author ID. And this is on a situation where we have the hoot ID but not the author ID. And I'm using this basically for the update hoot in the next function. It's going to be very similar to, excuse me, it's going to be very similar to the author ID. We're going to get do a get where, so query equals this db get where hoots, the table is hoots. The conditions, the associative array ID equal this ID we passed in, and then we're going to take that whole result and send it to a result array. If the size of the query, which is a 2D array, is greater than 0, that means something existed. Therefore, we're going to return the first result, because we only really expect one result. If we get more than one result, if something went wrong. And then on the second field, it's going to be the column, which will be author FK, so we're going to return that. Otherwise, we're going to return false. So again, very similar to the user ID. This is essentially getting the author ID from the hoot table, not the user. So after I'm done here, I'm going to go to update hoot. And here, all I'm going to do is pass in the ID of the hoot I'm trying to update and a new message. I could technically, especially if the author is a session, or the author ID is a session variable for whoever's logged in, I could also pass in the author ID here. But I chose just to use the hoot ID as a way of finding the author ID. So this ID is equal to the ID I passed in. This author FK is equal to the get author ID, and then I pass in the hoot ID I sent in as a parameter, and that will go up to this function and get that result. If that equals false, then there's no hoot and possibly throw an error. We have to figure out what we want to do. In this situation, I just return. Otherwise, if this is false, then I'm going, oh, by the way, you can return here, even though I'm not returning anything. You can also do this in Java. Even if it is a void return, you just return and then return nothing. It's just a simple way of stopping the function. Here, we're going to have a date string, again, just like we did above, and get and then set this message equals M, and then this date mod equals the current date, or mdate, with the date string. So we're going to update the date to the current timestamp because we're updating it again. And then we're going to do this database update hoots, this data object where the array, the column ID is equal to the ID I passed in. Now here's an example where I probably want to use the entire data object here versus, well, I could do it either way, but it's almost easier to do it this way versus the just doing a separate associative array here, because I still have to find the author ID, or I could skip the author ID. So I could spare myself this. I would have to make sure that the hoot ID existed, and then I could update, and I could update only the message, and I would still have to update the date mod. So by doing it this way, I guess the only thing I'm doing extra that I wouldn't have to do if I use the associative array method is this line here. And then I guess I wouldn't have to check for the ID, because this would actually check to see if there was a valid ID. If there wasn't, it would throw an error. So there's two different ways of doing the update. I'm not going to, this way I'm going to keep as using the data object or this object as the what thing I'm sending in. With the hoot likes, I'll show you how to modify it so I can send in only the the data that's changing. Then here I have a function for read hoot, which I send in a particular ID for the hoot ID. Again, in this model, ID is the hoot, not the user. And so this db get where tables users associative array of the condition ID is equal to the ID. And I send that query to result array, and I just return that query to my controller. And then get x hoots will get a certain number of hoots from the result. And this is just another example. I can just show you the query this db get. So I'm only going to do get this time. The tables, and then how many rows I want, and then I'm going to pipe that to a result array. So this was going to give me multiple hoots, and I think it will give me, at the moment, it will give me the oldest hoots. So I might have to reverse my order search here if I needed, but just for now this is fine. This will give me like the 10 hoots from the table. So this is my hoot model. Go to my user controller. Let's just comment this out. Here's insert hoot. This is the author ID, which is me. So we'll use Sam. I think Sam was 4, if I remember right. So we'll do 4, and then we'll say e-commerce is fun, and then we'll say print r read hoot. And we'll say, we'll find out whatever this one is. I think this one is going to be 6. We'll find out. So we'll try to read the 6 hoot that we get. So let's see what happens when we run that. Refresh this. Oh, and I get an error. Let's see what hoot model line 66. Must be a string. What did I change? Oh, come on. There we go. So here is the date as a debugging statement, and we have inside insert. So it doesn't look like it returned anything. Let's see if it created something here. So we'll go to our database, we'll go to hoots, and then we have, there we go. E-commerce is fun, so it looks like it did insert it twice, and the ID was 6. So what happened here? So this should have worked. So it inserted it twice. That's every time we refreshed it, it created a new one. We see the timestamp, the message, the author foreign key, which if we check our author, it should be Sam, and it is. And then our ID is 6 and 7. So what happened here? Let's go back to the controller. Oh, I don't do print R, that's why. So let's comment this out now. I don't want to keep changing that. And what we'll do is we'll say print underscore R. There we go. So do the array print on this result, and then we'll see the 2D array of our hoot. Or not. Wrong table. All right, I'm sorry. I apparently haven't used that function before. So hoots, make sure that's hoots, not users. So we go back here and it will work. Yes, there we go, finally. So there's one row, and then this row contains an array. And inside this array we have ID is 6, author FK is 4, message is e-commerce is fun, date mod, and then the date it was created. So here we can see we get a single hoot. Now, notice we have a duplication here. So we want to change this one. We don't want 7 to be the same thing. So let's go back to our code and see if we can change hoot number 7. So the hoot ID was 7, and we want to change a new message. Let's say I really like making web applications, and then we might as well just do a single print on hoot. Actually, you know what? I'll show you the get x hoots. We'll get the 5 hoots. So this will get the 5 hoots, or probably the last 5 hoots. Now I think about it, in the database. So go over here. We'll refresh this. So now we'll see something a little more interesting. We have, this is a debug statement. Arrays, we have 0. This contains an array. We have 1, which contains another array. 2, which contains another array. And if you look, you can see that on ID is 6, e-commerce is fun. ID is 7, e-commerce, oh, did I not change? Or did I have to refresh it? Hold on, let's see. I think it just didn't refresh in time. Oh, I changed the wrong one. So I changed 5 by accident. Oops. Yeah, so that should have been 7. Oh, it's weird. My computer would work. There we go. So I meant to change 7. I think I ended up changing 5. There's another example of what you don't want to happen. But I'll show you how to get the IDs more secure than just typing them in. So I refresh it. ID is 7. I really like making web applications. So you see that it did change. I put the wrong ID number in. So that's how we're going to update. I noticed that the timestamp is changing. I think this is in Greenwich Standard Time right now, but the timestamp is changing every time I update it. So we're going to, that is basically the hoot table. Hopefully you got that, or we're very, very close. And then we'll proceed with the like table after this. So now that we have the hoot table up, let's go and modify the hoot like table. Now here's one situation where we're going to see that using the built-in data object can be kind of cumbersome. So I'll also show you how to do this with just using the associative array to update the different ranked levels, because it's more cumbersome to try to update everything. A hoot like models. So we have the hoot like table. We need to be able to create and submit a rank for a hoot, alter the rank, delete the rank, and of course get the rank. I purposely left delete out for the other two, the hoot user and the hoots itself, because there you have to watch out for the foreign key constraints. We may talk about that a little bit later. But we can delete a rank fairly easy on a hoot. Alright, so we'll finish up pretty quickly here. Hopefully by now we're kind of getting the idea of how these models work. This is the hoot like model. So the way I've set this up is you're going to, if you like someone's post, or you're going to give them a rank, some sort of number, and that will also be recorded along with the date and time that you like this user's post. This one's interesting because it does have a user and a hoot foreign key. However, this one's actually fairly easy, and I'll show you why here in a moment. So the constructor, again, I'm just going to call the database. I'm also going to load the helper date, just like we did for hoot. So add like or insert like, if you will, either function name would be fine. I'm going to send in the user foreign key, the hoot foreign key, and then the rating or the score you give the user, and basically set those to the data structure or the data members. And then the ID is going to be 0 because it's auto increment. And then the date string is going to be just this date string we've been using. And then again, I'm going to be using mdate, which is a built-in CodeIgniter function from the date helper file. And we're going to insert this into likes, and we're going to insert this data structure. So this is kind of the basic insert, and should be pretty easy. Hopefully you guys got this. The next part, the modding it, is a little bit trickier because there's two foreign keys. So this is, I'm going to show you, this is, in my opinion, the hard way of doing it. And then I'll show you an easier way of doing it. So here I have a function called getFKeys or getForeignKeys. And basically this is going to give me a row of whatever is going to give me the row of the current existing hoot-like in the database. So I'm going to get everything in the table likes where ID is equal to the ID I sent in and return a result array. The reason I do this is I can, for my mod like or my changing or update, I have to send in the ID of the hoot like I'm changing and the new score. And then I have to update, because if I'm going to use this object, I have to update the hoot user FK and the hoot FK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the response is equal to the this.getFkey, send in this hoot likes ID. If it's not equal to false, then this user FK is equal to response user FK, this hoot FK is equal to response hoot FK, and this rank is equal to R, and then update the time and date, and then say this database update like this array, where ID is equal to ID. So I'm sending in this object, and because I'm sending in this object, I have to repopulate all of these values. And repopulating these two values are kind of a pain because only the best way I can find them is getting them from the current table. I could also pass these in, but that might make this function more difficult. Real quick, I will go into and show you what this will in fact work. And I'll show you what I would call the easier way. See here, I'm going to add a like. Remember the ID, or that's going to be the user ID, the hoot ID, and the score. So this is going to be, we'll make this 7 because we changed 7. Yeah, 7. Yeah. So now if I hit save and I run this, I shouldn't see anything appear on my web browser, but it will change the database. So I refresh this, nothing appears. I go to my likes table, and then here we see that ID is 3 just by coincidence, user is 3, hoot FK is 7, and I gave it a rank of 10, or a rank of 5, sorry. So we see that we did in fact add it. And now if I go back to this, I can mod this and say, you know what, say like is 3, and instead I'm going to make it 8. I'm going to change my score to 8. So I save this. I go back to my my web page, refresh it. Again, I'm not going to see anything. And then I refresh my likes table, and now you'll see that like ID 3 has the rank of 8. So this does work, and you could do this. This would be fine. Here's a situation though where only updating the specific thing that you want to change would make more sense. So instead of doing all of this, I'm going to comment this out. Again, you can copy both down if you want. I am going to have to keep, actually no, I'm going to just comment all of this out. So instead of doing that, I could simply say make a new array equals sorry, temp rank equals r, and then I can do temp date liked equal mdate, and I'll just copy this string in. So here I've updated the rank and I've updated the date. I've changed it. Instead of passing in this object, I'm going to pass in temp. Therefore, the foreign key for the hoot and the foreign key for the user remain unchanged, which is, I mean, these would not change. Like, you can't hijack someone else's like, or you can't change a like to a different hoot. So these would never change anyway. So now if I go over here to my user controller and say I want to make this 7 instead of 8, let's see if it runs. Hopefully this will work with no syntax errors. Nope, there was going to, of course there'd be a syntax error. 62. How's that an error? Oh, mdate, not mod date. Save that. All right, we'll try that again. All right, so nothing happened, but if we go back and look at our table, we go to likes, we'll see that it did in fact change to 7. Our timestamp also changed to 7. So here's an example where using a temporary associative array instead of the built-in functions members, or the class member variables like we had been doing, is actually much quicker and much simpler. So keep that in mind. This is again the other way of doing it. Instead of passing this in, we're going to pass in temp. So that's heads up. And in here we can do a delete like, because nothing is foreign keying off likes IDs. So maybe I just decide that I do not like this. Let's actually change. Yeah, maybe I just decide I don't like this ID or this like. So let's go and we're going to say what like. This is 3, right? So we'll go over here and we'll just say hoot like model delete like, and we'll say 3 because we just don't want to like that post or that hoot anymore. We'll save it. We go to our web page, refresh it. Again, it won't print anything out. Hoot my table doesn't exist. My table. Where is my table? So weird. Likes. Not sure why that was my table. I think I was trying to do some debugging. Okay, so likes, not my table. Save that. Go back to here. Refresh it. Again, nothing appears. That's fine. Now notice we have the like here. We have rank 3 or 2 and 3, and there's rank 10 and 7. I go to my likes, and now there's only the 2 and 10 rank. And the 7 has disappeared. So that's how you can remove a table. And you would have to do that for your hoots. You would have to remove the hoots first if you wanted to remove a user, and then you have to remove you have to remove all the likes and the users per each hoot. If you want to delete a hoot, if you want to delete a user, you have to delete all likes and all hoots as well. So That's just a quick view of the second model. I'm not going to do a model for roles because right now we'll just hard code it. When we get there, we'll hard code whether or not you're an admin or a user. Right now, everyone's a user, if you remember right. So we're both users. But we'll get back to this and figure out how to change this if we need to. So that will conclude the models. Again, hopefully you got really close to that. You can go back, pause the video if you need to, and make sure you have this working and you understand what's going on, especially since this is kind of a review. Understand the difference between doing it this method or doing it this method and see the pros and cons. So for review, we finished a basic model of the hoop table. We finished a basic model for the hoot-like table. We learned about the MySQL dates, and we learned how to access and change a database using an associative array instead of passing the object itself in. There will be no problem with the day today, so just make sure you have this working and what we've done, and then we'll go on from there. This has been Towle Talks. I hope hope the models are working. Please make sure they are working before continuing. And until next time, cheers. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something and enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment or a like below. And again, thank you.